From the Sunflower Shoppe, this is the Healthy Approach Podcast. I'm Bryan Bradford. Every one of us goes through emotional ups and downs at some point in our life. In 2020, we saw an all-time high in people dealing with anxiety and depression. It seems that in today's culture, our first response to stress and anxiety is to seek a quick fix as opposed to understanding the mechanisms involved in the way our body can make us feel. Don't get me wrong, medications are sometimes needed, but today's podcast is about bringing you alternative nutrients that can make big impacts on your body and your emotional balance. Back with me again is one of my favorite educators with LifeSeasons, Sarah Burden. Welcome to the show, Sarah.
Thanks, Bryan. I'm glad to be back.
Oh, thanks for being here today because we got a great topic. We're going to talk about that mental and emotional type of stress. So I really want to start where do you think we are as a society when it comes to mental and emotional stress? I know we are on the other side of lockdowns. We saw alcoholism go up. We saw social anxiety go up. Depression and suicides went up. All the drug abuse, even weight gain. We had so many things go up over the last year. So basically, we self-medicated or with pharmaceutical medications or other reasons, and those are all at all-time highs. So where do you think we are going from this point forward?
I think it was an interesting timing of everything that happened because for everything you're saying is true, right? That people found ways to try to get through, found ways to medicate, sometimes in a helpful way, a lot of times in unhelpful ways or things that weren't in service of our greater body health over time. But at the same time, there has been an increase in the national conversation about mental wellness, right? Mm-hmm. And about, anxiety and celebrities talking about, that like I go and get therapy and I've been, dealing with symptoms of stress and anxiety, or I've dealt with depression. So it's been revealed more that there are so many people dealing with these issues. And then it was compounded with, the period of national lockdown where we were cut off from friends and family, couldn't go participate in life in a normal way. So it's on everyone's radar more than ever now.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. But what impact do you think the last year has had on our body? And where do we start with addressing these concerns?
It absolutely has had an effect on everyone's body. I've even just talked in groups of friends about our kids. Even the kids are resilient, and even the kids who seem to have come through mostly okay. There are still sort of physical manifestations, emotional manifestations, and it's easy to see in sometimes, kids and animals, our pets, and we don't associate those same things with what's going on in ourselves because we're busy, we have busy brains, maybe we've still been working full time, and it's easy to overlook, but we're dealing with some of those things too. So I think a lot of us have maybe developed heightened sense of fear and worry. Maybe we've been working so hard to try to stay healthy. Maybe we have family members who are at risk and we've been extra worried about that. And overall, our systems have kind of gotten more keyed up, and we are more primed for that sort of fight or flight response. And also just not being out in the world, not going and doing our normal things, not having, physical touch and love from friends and family. I think a lot more people are experiencing symptoms of low mood and depression too.
I totally agree. And I think the biggest impact, at least what we see as a health food store, is the dietary changes. With so many people eating differently in the past now, it's really affected their gut. And we are understanding with science for sure that the more our gut is messed up, it definitely has an impact on the way we feel. So I know, to me as a nutritionist, that's one of the first places I'm looking at is what's their diet like? How's their gut? Are they constipated or heartburn or bloating? All those can be signs and symptoms of, GI complaints. But that leads to the way you feel. And that's important to understand that because, we know what serotonin's about 80 or 90% absorbed in the gut. One of our feel-good hormones. So it's important to have proper gut health. But I know there's a lot of other herbs out there that we're definitely going to talk about today that can help with the neurotransmitter imbalances that diet or self-medication or alcohol or all of these variables can really disrupt. And that's why I wanted to have you here today to talk about some of those really cool herbs that are showing some good science in helping to create balance again. So let's start with one of our most popular products in the store right now with LifeSeasons Anxiety. Tell me about the herbs in there and how are they working?
Yeah, no, well, and anxiety is not just your favorite, but it's LifeSeason's bestseller. It's my favorite product. So I'm so glad to hear when stores do well with that because we are hearing that, universally with this product. I think it really has been a godsend for a lot of people, and me included. It was one of the first products I took when I came to work for Life Seasons, and I've been taking supplements since, 2000, around 2001, 2002. I've been really into supplements and working in the industry. And so I'm already a believer, right? I'm already someone who is compliant and taking, all of my, counter full of supplements every day. And I took anxiety from Life Seasons. And about 20 or 30 minutes later, I was driving and I had this really overwhelming sensation of like, did I go to a yoga class and like space on it? Or did I have a massage this morning that I like am blanking out? Like, why do I feel so good and centered right now all of a sudden? And it took my brain like an embarrassingly long time to realize it's been about 20 or 30 minutes since I took anxiety, but it was that profound a change and I wasn't expecting it in my first serving of a supplement. But that's kind of Life Season's whole thing, right? If you use the right ingredients in the right milligram amount, the right dosage, put together in a thoughtful way, you really can have a profound experience from herbs and nutrients in a short amount of time.
I
So
totally agree. I
it
totally
does
agree,
work.
Sarah.
Yeah.
If you don't mind, I know we were talking before this podcast started about how you even found out you had anxiety. Could you explain a little bit of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So I did not identify with being an anxious person. I think my idea of what someone with anxiety looked like, I thought that would mean I needed to be very shy, not want to participate in social events, be terrified of public speaking, maybe be nibbling my nails down all the time. And none of those things are part of my experience. So I didn't associate that with me being anxious. And then I saw this list, and here's this list. It says, um, if you find yourself seeking comfort in food, mindlessly scrolling on social media, procrastinating on tasks that you could easily get done, using drugs or alcohol to numb is on this list, checking out, daydreaming, binging on TV shows, going on autopilot, and repeatedly going back to books or movies that you've read or watched many times before. These are all symptoms that you're trying to kind of self-medicate. And when I saw that list, I was like, oh.
Oh, now that makes more sense now, doesn't it?
Yeah, I do identify with some of those. And I had seen a traditional Chinese medicine doctor years ago, and she kept talking to me about my anxiousness and my levels of stress. And I thought she was assuming that based on my job. And she was basing it on what she was seeing physically in me. And I just wasn't in touch with it at that time. So anxiety became instantly my favorite formula. And I'll tell you the other reason I love it. I do want to talk about the ingredients with you, but I had taken other stress support formulas before, and often I either didn't really feel much from it and, maybe took it for a while thinking like, well, I'm building some nutrients in my body. I'm probably doing my body a service, but I don't really feel much from it. Or a few times I took formulas from health food stores that felt so sedative that I felt like I didn't care anymore. And I had an experience even at a health fair one time. A competitor rep gave me a sample serving of something. And by the end of the health fair, I was like, you know what, you guys, I don't even care if you take vitamins anymore. I like turned into the Big Lebowski. And so that's not a good option for me either. And so what I love about anxiety is that I can take that formula and I feel like, oh, everything is okay. Everything is already okay. I'm equipped for whatever life throws at me and I can handle it. And so I don't feel checked out and numbed and I don't feel nothing. I feel good and like my best self.
You feel balanced again. And I think that's what's very
Yes.
important because everybody deals with stress differently. We understand this. And there's a lot of mechanisms, I guess, that can throw neurotransmitters out of balance. And so the anxiety tea product, I have one in front of me. Y'all have, what, at least 5 major herbs. I know y'all promote on the front of the bottle. Ashwagandha being number 1, GABA, kava, Ltheanine. We're going to talk about those. But what I like about what y'all done is you're really focused on different modalities of why we get imbalanced in the first place. That the like ashwagandha. I don't want to get ahead of what you're talking about, but ashwagandha is so good for the adrenals, for helping to balance that cortisol mechanism of that fight or flight hormone. And then you get into more of the
Yes.
feeding of the brain with GABA, and that's what I really want to hear you talk about today is how GABA affects our brain. So start there for us.
Absolutely. Well, and you're totally right. Life Seasons formulas, we have a fantastic formulation team who together has over 150 years of formulation experience for the natural product industry. And they really do look holistically. Why is this person in this state, right? Not just masking or giving a Band-Aid effect. And that's something you and I were kind of talking about before, that absolutely, thank goodness that these medications, are here in
Yes.
emergency situations when somebody needs kind of emergency intervention for mood or depression. But that for kind of everyday imbalances, why have we gotten to this place, right? Why have we gotten to this point of imbalance? And is there something nourishing that needs to happen so that that symptom stops happening? If I just turn off the symptom, I may never discover and rebalance what's kind of going on internally. So that's why I love this formula. But like you said, ashwagandha is a very well-known herb for times of stress, really helps lower that cortisol production. And I think so many of us don't know what that cortisol rush feels like, but it's that like hot rush. It goes right like through your heart, through your gut and your heart and into the palms of your hands when you feel that hot, sweaty feeling. If someone cuts you off in traffic, if you think you've missed an important conference call, like you can feel that visceral feeling in your body. And that's that cortisol response.
That's right.
And cortisol does get tamped down by sugary, starchy foods, like a cupcake will feel like it does affect cortisol, right? Their blood sugar and cortisol are so linked. So that is a common way to self-medicate is sugary snacks. So if you know you're a person, like for your listeners and followers who are watching this, if you know you're a sugar junkie and that it tends to go along with times of stress, or when you've been writing a paper presentation for work, you feel like you're going for on sugar binge, a lot of times that's tied to cortisol. And so ashwagandha is a much healthier way, right, without those kind of long-term
That's right.
negative health implications, to help keep that cortisol back in balance.
That's a
And it
great
does
point, Sarah.
also promote, yeah.
Most people don't, I've never made that connection that their stress response leads to more carbs and sugar cravings. And so that's a great analogy, the way
Hmm.
you just explained that there is a connection there, that that cortisol response requires glucose because it's fight or flight, right? We were designed to run away from danger, and you need energy to
Absolutely.
run, which makes the body use up that glucose much faster. So we have more cravings for it. So that's a great way to put it. Talk to me about
Yeah.
GABA. I want to hear how the
Yeah,
GABA
yeah. And so
affects the brain.
right. Well, so ashwagandha does also promote GABA activity in the body too. So even the ashwagandha ties in with that. So GABA is a neurotransmitter, and it is the chief inhibitory neurotransmitter in the body. So we have excitatory neurotransmitters that sort of get us more, energized and galvanized and ready to do more. And GABA is an inhibitory neurotransmitter, so it sort of pumps the brakes on a runaway brain. And GABA can be found in small amounts in certain foods. It's produced by the body. And then there are certain herbs that we're going to be talking about that do also have an effect on GABA. So Life Seasons within this formula, anxiety also includes GABA as an ingredient all by itself, so that it can immediately start having some of that kind of hushing, calming benefit on the brain, but in a really balanced way, like you said earlier, where I don't feel like everything is turned off. I feel like just the background chatter and those extra windows with annoying pop-up ads are turned off. And so the rest of me can be calm and focused.
That's right. I've always heard GABA called as the brain's natural Valium. It's a good way to put it. That
Oh,
it's just
nice.
very calming to the brain. So a lot of people use it for sleep too. That's why a lot of people
Hmm.
take GABA at night for sleeping, because it does help relax and sort of turn that 90-mile-an-hour brain off for a lot of people. So to me, GABA is one of the best amino acids out there for most of us out there dealing with that stress response. It's one of the go-to amino acids for sure. What about the vagus nerve? Doesn't GABA impact our vagus nerve as well?
It does. It does. And so, for decades, we've heard people talking more and more about the mind-body connection, right? And the vagus nerve is kind of literally the mind-body connection, right? It's the nerve that connects brain and gut and really does impact us going in and out of the fight or flight response, and then also in and out of another response that a lot of people don't know about, rest and digest, right? So we have fight or flight and we have rest and digest. And unless our body is good at getting in and out of both of those, we are not going to feel great. We're not going to achieve optimal health. So like we were saying, if someone, veers and cuts us off in traffic and I have that fight or flight response, well, my body needs to have that so that I can save myself from a potentially deadly situation. I need to have my body engaged that way to protect my life. But if the danger has passed, my body needs to be able to move back out of fight or flight equally quickly, because if I stay in it too long, there's going to be long-term sort of deleterious effects to my body. And then the same thing with rest and digest. I need to be able to move into it when it's time to eat or sleep. And I also need to be able to move back out of it. But I think when the vagus nerve is poorly toned, when it hasn't been given the nutrients and the stimulation that the vagus nerve needs, I'm not going to be as good in my body at moving in and out of fight or flight and rest and digest. So that will lead to digestive issues, sleeping troubles, lots of stress response, and then just overall decline in my health. So the vagus nerve, travels from up in the brain down into the gut and around all over the body, like it's a vagrant. It's wandering all over the body. But GABA receptors and acetylcholine receptors are critical for the vagus nerve to work properly. And there are some things that I think it's really cool to learn that help promote health of the vagus nerve, like humming and singing and chanting. And so some of these very, very ancient, every ancient and primitive society, right? The deep throat humming and singing that we would do as a group, it's toning the vagus nerve, right? It's not just even a community experience or religious experience. It's having a physiological effect. Isn't that so cool?
It's very cool. In fact, I have a lot of my clients hum. I always put that one out there too, but gargling, in the morning when they're brushing their teeth or at nighttime before brushing teeth, just gargling, but it's got to be aggressive gargling. I always make a joke about it. Say, I want your spouse to think that you're drowning in the bathroom. Make a very aggressive sound, because that's what really stimulates that vagus nerve. So I agree with you. The humming, singing, all those things, and that vagal nerve stimulation really does have an impact on that brain-body balance. So it sounds funny, so but cool. it makes a difference for a lot of people. It really does.
Yeah, I think it's so neat to hear that. And also going in and out of hot and cold water, which is another super ancient, thing that humans have done across many, many cultures, is going from cold to hot extremes with water and saunas and things like that. That's very stimulating for the vagus nerve. I'm sure you know many more. What else do you recommend for people?
Those are some of the easiest ones to really do, as far as the humming and gargling and singing. I mean, gosh, everybody can do that. So that's always a great place to really help stimulate that vagus nerve. But with the acetylcholine and the right nutrients, like you were saying, it's important to make sure you're getting all the tools so your body can do those things efficiently. But I love that rest and digest and fight or flight, because a lot of people can't turn fight or flight off. And that's why sometimes we need help, like with kava or GABA, to really help create that balance for that to happen for many people. So you also got L-theanine. You got L-theanine in here too. Why did y'all add that to it?
So L-theanine is very, very calming and centering for the brain, right? It's an amino acid-like compound. It's like a close cousin of amino acids, and it's famously in green tea. Like matcha green tea has the highest amount. Actually, all tea contains some L-theanine, but going all the way from oxidized black tea up to matcha having the most L-theanine. And they say that Buddhist monks cultivated matcha tea so that they could sit and meditate longer. And that's such a great thing to notice about it, because of course green tea contains some caffeine, but if you had an equivalent amount of caffeine derived maybe from coffee, you probably wouldn't sit and meditate very effectively, because your brain would be sort of bouncing around a little bit too much. But the same amount of caffeine in green tea, because of the partnership with L-theanine being packaged together molecularly with the caffeine in green tea, you're able to sit in a centered and focused way for much longer. So it's a pretty cool thing. Yeah,
that is definitely
the biggest reason that the biggest reason LifeSeasons included L-theanine in this formula, though, is because there's a small study on a specific ratio of L-theanine and kava, and it's a 2-to-1 ratio, 200 milligrams of L-theanine and 100 milligrams of kava. And what the researchers found was really interesting, and this is something I love about herbs. It's not always 1 + 1 = 2, right? There's
That's
almost
right.
alchemy that happens in the human body with plants. So that 2-to-1 ratio, L-theanine and kava. Okay, so L-theanine, centering, calming, helps you meditate. Kava, extremely calming. It could be used as a sedative agent almost. So you put together two things that are sort of centering and calming. Do you get doubly centered and calmed? No, what the study showed was that actually this combination, curiously, promotes this state of calm confidence and a brightened brain energy. That's what the researchers wrote in the abstract.
Wow.
Brightened brain energy and increased sense of calm confidence. And when I learned this was after I'd already been taking the product, I was like, that is exactly how I should have been describing it: calm confidence and brightened brain energy. So that's the opposite of checked out and stoned and like you don't care. It's
That's
being
right.
all in and being able to be all in. And so that ratio of L-theanine and kava is why.
Being present, huh? I like that. I've never heard that study before. Very interesting.
It's
That's
cool,
pretty
right? I
cool.
got that from Brent Roth. So I'll try to find that from him and get that over to you because it is really
Yeah,
neat.
very interesting. And then there's another ingredient in here that most people have not heard of before, and it's called theobromine, right?
Yeah.
Did I
And
pronounce that right? All
I
right.
wish I had this. Yeah, I wish I had a better visual to show you. Maybe we can link to it or something. But if you look at, a chemistry, the kind of the molecule drawn out like you did in chemistry class when you were in high school of caffeine versus theobromine, they are nearly identical. There's just one little group that is different, like a carboxyl
Okay.
group or something is different
Hmm.
between the two. So when you toggle back and forth between the two images, you can see almost exactly the same structure between caffeine and theobromine. And theobromine comes from cacao, and so close cousin of coffee, and has all these wonderful benefits that we associate with chocolate being kind of a mood kind of food.
Yeah.
And theobromine is a big reason why. So it does some of the same things to the brain that caffeine does, where we, have that cup of coffee in the morning. We're like, all right, everything's going to be okay. Now I'm uplifted, I'm energized, right? And so theobromine does the same thing without stimulating the central nervous system and your heart rate. And so we are able to stay kind of more calm and collected while our brain is getting that benefit of a very close cousin of caffeine.
Very interesting, Sarah. I mean, it's just a great formula overall, and people are just remarking about all the results they're getting from it. So it's a great thing, like you said, just to help bring you down, but still be present. And it really helps you get out of that
Hmm.
fight or flight mode. You'll have another product called
Yeah.
Mood Stability, which I know is one of your newer products on that side. So even us, we don't probably have a lot of testimonies on it yet, but I love the formulation, and I can see why this is working too. So let's break down those ingredients and why y'all use those.
Absolutely. So anxiety is really good for somebody who's got that mental chatter, the busy brain, and maybe tends more towards the kind of compulsive and overthinking side of things. Mood stability was formulated for somebody who's feeling low, maybe low energy, lower interest in life, maybe feeling, gloomy and blue a lot. And so mood stability contains nutrients to kind of address some underlying deficiencies that may be going on in that person's body, and then also help to try to promote healthy neurotransmitter production within the body, and also stress response and circulation. So this is good for somebody who's maybe kind of feeling more checked out, feeling less interest in life, feeling sad kind of more than is normal for them. Great for during times that are like that, or if it's been a little bit more of an ongoing issue, this could be a good support. This is also really good for somebody who's just crabby and cranky. So one big bit of feedback we've gotten on this is people who are just really irritable benefit from this formula, that people who just tend to be like kind of cantankerous grouches really do feel better from this product too. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
It is interesting. I mean, like you said, you're addressing the circulation. I see L-tyrosine in here as well, so I know that helps with the thyroid and metabolic rate. So I can see that why that's sort of giving them that pep and uplifting type of ingredient too. 5-HTP,
Hmm.
saffron. What is saffron in here for?
So the saffron is in there. It does provide that kind of like that sunshiny feeling, and it helps promote serotonin within the body. It's
Yes.
been used for mood for, I mean, just maybe 1,000 years, right? That it has
Yeah.
recorded use. Um, long, yeah, Avicenna published it as a remedy for depressed mood in 1025, saffron.
Wow.
And of
That's
course,
amazing.
yeah. So a long recorded history of use of this herb for that particular issue, right? So if you've cooked with saffron, if you've traveled to Spain and you see how it's the little thread stamens of the iris plant, it can take 100,000 saffron blossoms to produce a single pound of saffron. So it's one of the costliest ingredients in the world, but it has been used to address that, giving that kind of sunshiny, uplifted feeling for 1,000 years, which is pretty
Wow,
cool.
that's amazing. That is pretty cool. I notice always a
Yeah.
trend with a lot of your mood type builders in a sense, whether it's mood stability or even the anxiety. But with L-theanine added to this as well too, L-tyrosine, talked about GABA. The trend I see in all that most of those are some type of amino acids or like precursors in many
Hmm.
ways. And so it just tells me that, hey, if this is working for you, we might want to also evaluate your protein intake in your diet because a lot of people aren't getting enough protein. And remember, most of your really all protein is made up of amino acids. So it's important to always
Yeah.
check that for balance too when it comes to the dietary principles. So let's break this down for the viewers then. We talked about anxiety and mood stability. Can we take both or which person should be taking which one? One sort of sounds like it brings me down and more balanced and present. The other one's sort of uplifting. So what if I have both problems?
Yeah, no, and that's the first question that customers always ask is, can I take both? And absolutely you can. As with any supplement or any over-the-counter medication, always run it by your healthcare provider to make sure that it's the right fit for you and anything else that you're taking, of course. But yes, people do take both because anxiety really is for that kind of the kind of spinning, busy mental chatter, so that that can be quieted and we can feel calm and present and confident and able to go about and do our day. And mood stability is really that uplifting formula and also decrankifying for people who are grouchy.
Is that in the English dictionary, decrankifying? I haven't seen that yet. That's a word I would make up usually. So, yeah, I like that. I'm going to use that the rest of the weekend. Decranktified. So, no, that's great. So, what's the dosage on these? How do we take them through the day?
Yeah, so anxiety is a two a day, and mood stability is also a two a day. I would say mood stability, you would want to take it in the morning or with lunch because there are a lot of B vitamins. There's rhodiola. Rhodiola is such an energizing herb without caffeine. It still gives such an energy boost. And we're working on the thyroid, right? So I would say mood stability, I would tell people take with breakfast or lunch. Anxiety, you can take any time of the day and you can take it right at bedtime. It isn't sedative itself, anxiety, but because it does kind of quiet all that mental chatter. And for some people, that's when they notice. I've had a number of customers tell me they don't relate to mental chatter through the day, but the second their head hits the pillow, that's when it gets really loud. Or somebody
That's
said
right.
all her browser tabs open back up in her brain. And so everything is getting processed all at once. And so anxiety is great if you get that busy brain right at bedtime.
I totally agree, which is a lot of people right now, that's for sure, in today's time. So you got
Absolutely.
two awesome
That's right.
products here,
There's a lot
Sarah,
to think about.
and I know it's going to help a lot of people. So, thanks so much for being on the show today and breaking these two things down for us. And check these out at Sunflower Shop, guys. Well, I hope you enjoyed this episode of the Healthy Approach Podcast. Be sure to subscribe if you like this podcast and help us spread the word by rating and sharing with your friends and family. If you'd like to learn more about what you can do for your emotional health, go to sunflowershoppe.com. That's shop with two P's and an E, or visit us at one of our 2 locations in the Dallas-Fort Worth area.